Hello, Kings fans, and welcome to another edition of our LA Kings Legend Series. I'm Jeff Moeller. I work for the Kings with the Alumni Association and our heritage efforts, among other things. Nearly 700 men have played for the Los Angeles Kings over our 50-plus year career, but only a handful can say they were there day one. And one of our guests today, Ted Irvine, was one of those gentlemen, an original King who played 3 seasons in LA before moving on to the New York Rangers. And also joining us, a special guest today, Ted's son. You probably recognize him from the world of rock and roll, the world of professional wrestling. And Chris is going to sit in here from Florida, listen to stories from Dad, and on occasion we'll ask him to chime in on his dad's career and hockey on the whole.
Let me just say that you pulled off a huge coup here, and the fact that my dad actually knows how to use Zoom now and even created a little set behind him. I can't even get a reply from a text, and he's Zooming you.
All right. Are we on the air yet?
And obviously, to both of you, your families, and everyone watching in and around the world, we hope everyone's safe during these unique times. Well, Ted, you played 3 seasons in LA. That was right when expansion occurred. The NHL goes from 6 to 12. For someone in your position, suddenly 6 more teams on the horizon. I assume that was very good news for you.
Oh, definitely, because that time with the old 6-team league, we never thought we'd get an opportunity to play, like for me with Boston. The way it was, once they picked their team, those guys stayed there for 10 years maybe. So to make it into the league was very, very difficult. And I played with some great hockey players in Oklahoma City, Hall of Famers to this day. Jerry Cheevers, Bernie Perrant, Derek Sandersons, and a lot of good hockey players, and Joey Watson. We just never thought we'd get a chance. So when they announced the expansion, we really didn't quite understand it was, because the media wasn't like it is today, or what I heard it's like today. So I remember listening on the radio. My name never came up. I think I was number 11 or 12. I was going to the LA Kings, and right away I went to the list. I didn't know anybody. I knew a couple of guys I played against. So we really didn't realize the depth that was going on until we got closer to training camp. Then we realized this is going to be different than going to a Boston training camp, because we get a chance now to play in the National Hockey League.
What were your initial, obviously you haven't played for the Kings for now more than 50 years, which is probably hard for you to believe, but do you have memories, your initial impressions of coming to Los Angeles? And I'd ask you about the hockey culture, which I assume maybe didn't exist at all, or did it?
No, there wasn't much culture there at all. And when they picked the team at training camp, you got to remember the Los Angeles King, Mr. Cook went in and bought all the players from the Springfield Indians. So when we went to, I can't say that, but that's what the name of the team was. But when we went to training camp, there would be 70 guys there, guys who hadn't skated in years, all trying for the NHL. So we didn't really get to know our team till we got in the airplane to go to LA. Chris's mom at that time, we had no money. We were down at training camp for 5 weeks. They give us tickets to go eat meals. And we didn't have cars to get to the restaurant. So Chris's mom was kind enough to send me $20 once in a while so I could eat something down there. So then when we got in the plane to go to LA, we were excited, but at the same time, we still didn't know all about the NHL. The only guy we had was Terry Sawchuk. And Terry was a very private man. He's good to me because he's a Winnipegger. We didn't know what to expect. Red Kelly was our coach. Mr. Cook was our owner. We never got a chance to meet him, So when we got to LA, they put us in a hotel. And then at that time, we played the old Long Beach Arena. So we still didn't understand what we were. There was nothing in the paper about us. We had no apartments, no cars, no money. And we didn't know what was going on. And finally, Terry Sawchuk, one practice, stopped everything and just said to our coach, Red Kelly, I'm going home. You can't treat these guys like this. And that got back to Mr. Cook. And the next day it became more like an NHL team we had cars and apartments and food to eat and everything else. And then we were lucky in LA, the Springfield guys, about 8 or 9 guys came from that team from Springfield to play in LA. That helped us so much. We became close as a team because those guys had played together for years. So we didn't know much. And even when we played our early games in Long Beach, we didn't know each other. We didn't know the game. I guess when we really started to become NHL players when we went on our first road trips. Okay. Then we're going to the old original six. And then we realize, wow, you skate into those buildings, 17, 19,000 people. Our meal money checks are bigger than our paychecks. And then we realized we needed two suits, not one. It started to become more like the NHL. And then being in the hockey news. And then we started to appreciate we're really in the NHL now, but it took a while.
I've never asked this before. Do you think, obviously, with the expansion happening with the 6 extra teams opening up so many more jobs, do you think that you would have made it into the NHL had there been no expansion?
No. Because at that time, Chris, we played in the Central League, which is considered the kids' league, and that's where all your prospects were coming from. I played there 3 years and 1 year in Minneapolis, and after a while, nobody was trading for you. They didn't call us up. I lived with Joey Watson. He got called up. We couldn't find the airport in Oklahoma City. He missed the game. No, we just Jerry Cheevers came down. Derek Sanderson was going to be a player. No, I don't see myself, Boston, ever giving me an opportunity.
Ted, what about the lifestyle in LA? The weather obviously had to have been a major change for you in the wintertime. You got the beach out here. You got a lot of things to do. Was it hard to focus on hockey with other distractions at that time or no?
Not really, because we didn't know about other attractions because we were playing Oklahoma City. I mean, we didn't go and do a lot. So when we got to LA, they were pretty good. We practiced a fair amount, and we're on the road. You got to remember those early years. We're on the coast there. We had to go to New York and Detroit, so we were on the road quite a bit at that time. So it wasn't that tough. Jack Kent Cook, I think, did a pretty good job. We practiced up in Culver City, and we had a lot to learn about the game at that time. So, we did some things, but we weren't beach guys, and they had bars in those days. So after practice, you went to the bar, and that was the Polynesian Village was one of the nicest sights I've ever seen.
Amazing. You mentioned Mr. Cook, the team's founder, original owner. Kind of had a reputation for maybe being, like you mentioned earlier, a little tight with the dollar. Also a great salesman from Canada originally, coming out and selling the product. One of the unique things about Mr. Cook is he applied a lot of nicknames, whether it was Real Frenchie Lemieux, Cowboy Bill Flett, Eddie the Jet Joyal. Was it unique to say the least in terms of working for that owner?
I to this day, I found him one of the best motivational speakers I've ever heard, and I didn't know what that meant at that time. He was so up, so positive, and the NHL original 6, they didn't want a lot of new owners in there, and Mr. Cook was pretty bombastic, and he wasn't going to take anything from anybody. He owned the Washington Redskins. He had the LA Lakers. I found him to be delightful. I was telling you earlier, I scored the overtime goal against Oakland, and he had promised $1,000 whoever got the goal, and I had to go wait in his office. And he walked by me 3 or 4 times, and you asked me about a nickname. I had black horn-rimmed glasses that time. He walked by me 2 or 3 times. He finally said, "Are you Ted Irvine?" And I played for him for a year. He had no idea who I was. But I used to love his speeches, and even I was looking at some of his old programs, how much he believed in hockey down in that area and how tough it was for him to do it. And he started selling soap and encyclopedias in Sudbury, Ontario, or something like that. I found him very motivated. And money, I negotiated my own contracts. Chris knows how I negotiate. I paid them, basically. And so I never found him cheap or anything like that. I found he was I admired how he handled himself and what he was building. And he was feisty.
Some of your teammates in those early days, a future Hall of Famer, Terry Sawchuk, Brian Kilray, obviously went on and had a great deal of success. You played with Butch Goring, who many feel could be in the Hall of Fame easily. Who are some of the guys that jump out at you? I know when we had our 50th anniversary, it was great to see you with a lot of your former teammates, some 50 years later.
Well, Chris knows, teammates are teammates. And when we got together in LA, which was a wonderful event put on by you folks, it was 15 minutes. It was like we were back in the dressing room. One guy, Paul Popiel, had only played 1 game. And he said, "I'm coming." And it was like we've been friends forever. Bobby Wall and Killer, Howie Menard, and all the guys, Brent Hughes, and we became very close friends. And so it was fun to be part of that whole atmosphere again. But Terry Sawchuk was the living legend. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer. He had a tough life later on, but he was one of the toughest goaltender ever. In the old days, they had not very good skates, and the old goal sticks used to have a corner on the blade. If you stood in front of him, he'd hit you on the bone of your blade. He'd put you down the ice so fast, and he'd just say, "Get out of my net." He wasn't afraid to fight you. If you ever saw his face, all the scars and everything else. And why I admired him so much is he won the Vezina, and he wouldn't accept it because they wouldn't put Johnny Bauer on the trophy with them. And they changed that, and they put Johnny on it. So I had a lot of respect for him. And then he came to New York, and I was there, and he was hurt physically. And but Terry's a good guy. If it wasn't for him, trust me, we wouldn't have been fed, got cars or apartments that week. He stood up for us, and he didn't have to.
Hey, let me ask you this too, Ted. When you first came to LA, obviously we know the big brouhaha that took place when Gretzky went there in '88. When you guys got there in '67, did anybody know what hockey was? Give a shit about it? Care? Did you guys get good crowds for your games?
Well, we didn't have the press follow us. Like I said, we played in Long Beach at first, so we never even played in the Forum for the longest time. We practiced in Culver City, and when we got to the rink, there was quite a few reporters. Fran Scott or Sonia Henning that rented ice and our reporters all the time, and the reporters and photographers would come take pictures of her.
You said we lost you. You said of Peggy Fleming.
Pardon me?
We lost you for a second. Who was there that was skating?
It was Sonia Henning and Barbara Ann Scott. Well, Peggy Fleming's, they flew us in. NBC did an hour show. Thanks for remembering that one. We were on the ice for 2 days. It was wonderful. I got home and I said, "Everybody, you got to watch this. I'm on TV, and it's going to be an hour-long special." We were on for about 2 seconds, and all you saw was our skates. And
welcome to showbiz, kid.
Yeah. So now they didn't know us at all down there. Mr. Cook was disappointed because he's all the Canadians down here, and the only time they showed up was when Montreal and Toronto played. And then we knew we were in the NHL then too, because there were so many of their sweaters up there and that. Now, like I say, it took us a while. When we started to go into Montreal, Toronto, Chicago, New York, then we realized, wow, to believe where the Los Angeles Kings are today, where they were then. I remember to the boxing matches, Chucho Castillo and Lyle LaRose, 16,000 people. They tried to burn down the Forum. There was more people watching boxing than ever thought of coming to see us.
Did you have much interaction with the Lakers, Ted? Obviously, the NBA wasn't as popular then as it is now, but with Mr. Cook owning, I do know there was some times where he would do some cross-promotional of the two franchises.
We didn't have cross-promotion. The LA Lakers were terrific guys, absolutely terrific. And, Wilt Chamberlain was there at that time, Jerry West, Godrich. They always practiced at the Forum. We had to go to Culver City. So after practice, we'd come there, and there'd be a game that night. We'd put all their equipment on and go out and play basketball. Howie Menard is 5'6". We used to put Wilt sweatpants on him, just tied the rope around his head and put his size 19 sneakers on him. And Wilt came and said, "That's not funny." But if we went into New York, they would meet with us. They were very kind and good to us, and they were a big name. Jerry West, classy. But the old Forum, you got to remember, the doors were built 8 foot high. The benches were about 9 foot high. Howie Menard couldn't even touch the floor when he did up his skates. It was a basketball crowd, but they were good to us.
Ted, what type of player were you, for those who weren't fortunate enough to see you to play with the Kings, and maybe later on in your career? Were you the type of player with the Rangers that you were with the Kings? Describe, kind of put on your scouting hat for me here.
When I played junior, I was a goal scorer. When I got into Oklahoma City, I could score goals, but you start to meet different players, have different talents. So I became more of a second, third line. When I got to LA, I was lucky. I played with Brian Kilray and Lowell McDonald. And the first 10, 12 games, Killer and I were in the top 12. Bobby Hall, Lee Van Cornway, Jean Beliveau. We were right up there. We had a good line. Then Killer got his knee hurt. And my career went downhill, so does his. But at that time, playing as a team, you find your role. And at that time, I still hadn't found my role with LA because you're bouncing around with different lines. It's when I got to New York when I realized to survive, I'd have to be tougher. I had a role to play. And in New York at that time, they were an established team. They had a role for me also. I wasn't expected to do much. So I fit in very nicely because I knew what I could do in that team, what the club expected, and I was able to score some goals. Now, my career changed when I got to New York.
Chris, maybe I'll ask you the same question. Memories of watching Dad and or, watching him on film, seeing the old photos. What did you like about his game?
Well, the thing I like about it now is he was always so not pro, but he was a New York Ranger, to the death, tattooed on his heart, sort of thing. But I think it's been really cool for him over the last few years, probably since the 50th anniversary, that he's kind of really re-embraced the Kings years as well, which I think maybe you've forgotten about it a bit because New York was such a big deal and such a big place. But so is LA, and I think you guys, as a alumni and as a team, Jeff, and all the media and people surrounding have done a great job in remembering their alumni over the last few years. And then fast forward to last year when we used to have this thing called hockey in front of crowds, and the St. Louis Blues win the Stanley Cup, and on the Zamboni they're driving to the streets. They have every blue ever on the Zamboni, and right at the top by whoever the captain was last year, it says Ted Irvine. Throughout the whole streets, every picture, Ted Irvine. So I think it's cool to kind of know the impact that Ted had kind of on all those teams. Would you agree with that, Dad? That you've kind of embraced that over the last few years?
Chris knows me better than anybody, and he always says to me, "Dad, you were there," and I've always had trouble accepting that. You're remembering us in 1967 was very, very important to so many people. And I thank the fans and you guys, but the guys in that team that we all got a chance to play there, whether it be for 10 games or 2 or 3 years or playing NHL, was really kind of cool. And I looked at the LA Kings now, where you're at right now. At that time, there was no hockey in California. Jack Kent Cook wanted fans. Look at you guys now. You got San Jose, you got Anaheim, you got you guys. I was going to give you a little bit of tidbit. Chris would probably get a kick out of this. The Players Association may have started in Los Angeles. Because Brian Kilray was the captain of the Springfield Indians, and when he got to LA, he had brought Alan Eagleson in. Remember him? To represent Springfield in the American Hockey League against Eddie Shore. When we got to NHL, Brian Kilray brought Eagleson into LA to meet with us, and that's where Eagleson started the NHL Players Association. So that whole league and the guys, but I think last year when I got to the Staples Center, I looked around, and you had one of the greatest hockey players, if not the greatest, in Wayne Gretzky there. Ambassador style, on and off the ice type thing. I don't know if you know that night when you guys had that nice affair for us. We were in the room waiting to come on the ice, and we were standing in the dressing room having a coffee and a pop. Wayne Gretzky came in and said to Luc Robitaille, "Where's the champagne?" And Luc says, "What do you mean?" He says, "These guys started this. 3 bottles of champagne showed up, and Wayne Gretzky did a toast to us, thanking us. Then Marcel Dion, then Luc Robitaille. Then we realized, oh my God, we were part of something special. But to be honored by those guys was really kind of very, very special that we were part of that whole thing."
I think something about the legacy of Ted Irvine, not as the son, but just watching this as a hockey fan and kind of going into the history, is you've got one of obviously probably in the 40s and 50s, but one of the original power forwards. And when you look at Ted's stats, you've got 4 years where they were 20-goal seasons. And if they weren't 20 goals, they were 17, 18, where you get 26 in another year. So let's say 4 20-goal seasons out of 10 years that he played. If you did that nowadays, you'd be a $10 million a year player easy, $15 million a year player easy, and then getting over 100 penalty minutes or whatever it may be. So this is a guy who kind of opened the doors for that position. And I think a lot of times people might not realize that about Ted in 2020, but that's also why he's got a great reputation amongst the fans that did remember him and do remember him, because you always knew what you're going to get with Ted, which was a tough player, didn't take any shit, but could score a goal, so you couldn't turn your back on him either. And he was only on the third line with no power play.
Yeah.
So think about that.
Yeah, Ted, fortunately, your daughter lives in the San Diego area. So I know you guys come out every now and again. I think you came to a game a year or two ago. I think it would only be natural for you to watch the game now, to sit in the crowd and imagine, yourself out there in today's game. How do you think you would mesh? How do you think you would fit in today's game? I would think it's in the back of your mind at some point as you're watching these, when we do get back to live action.
I used to say, give me 2 weeks, I'd go out there in a minute. Give me a month now. When I would come to your games, I have an adrenaline rush like you won't believe. Uh, it was a privilege playing there, and I'd love to be out there again right now. Would I fit in because I'm a team guy? You know what? Yeah, I would fit in because I'd find a role to play. I wouldn't let guys take advantage of other guys. I'd snap right away that way. I'd love to be out there right now. Do I respect and admire what these guys do now? Yeah, but when I sit there, I still say, I'd love to be out there a couple of times just to smoke one guy that's yapping off somehow or stand up for somebody. We got some wonderful hockey players here in Winnipeg, Scheifele and Wheeler. If they got hit, just to be part of that atmosphere, it's a team atmosphere, to rally together. And like Chris and I talked, it's only so in life you only get to do so many things you love to do. Chris got two things he loves: music and hockey, or music and wrestling. And to be able to say there's only so many people in the world. When I go to Chris's wrestling matches, I'm one of the guys in that room. You got to earn that right, And they want to talk hockey, and I want to talk wrestling. When all the walls come down, because nobody really understands what it's like out to be there in front of people, to have to react, to have to perform, and then do it again the next night. And what a great, great privilege that is. So events like yours, I brought my family there, and my daughter's never seen that. She said, "What is this?" I said, "That's part of me," because you guys took me down to the dressing room, and Daryl Sutter and his son Chris are there. What a privilege. What a great privilege. Would I like to try it again? You're darn right. I would not take a cut and pay. I would ask Chris to represent me.
We're going to ask you kind of one more formal question here, Ted, and then we'll hit father and son with a couple quick fun hits. You're at work right now, Ted, aren't you? Oh, what did you do after you hung up the skates? Still got some bills to pay, I guess?
Still got some bills. I never played on the power play, so I owe a lot. Now, when I came out, I went into the financial business, and then I went independent in 1987, and I've been independent in the last 7 or 8 years. Chris has been motivating me for years, and he kept on saying, "Dad, you got to recreate yourself." I've never been happier in my whole life. My business has never been better. I'm doing better work for people. There's such a phrase. Happier than ever have been. But I thank sports for everything, because you get a good read on people. Don't get too cocky. You're going to get knocked down, and surround yourself with good people. So, yeah, I'm lucky. I've got a partner, Jordy Duggs, used to play, and I handle his money. And he's never forgiven me because he's still working, and because of me handling his money, he's got no money here. And so no, I'm still working. I love every minute. I'm independent, and I love people.
Awesome. We'll kind of do a couple quick hits here. Ted, I know your daughter, like I said, lives in the San Diego area. I believe she's a music teacher. First, in the classroom, short answers. How were you in the classroom, and do you have any musical abilities yourself?
I taught Chris how to sing. Classroom, I was Eddie Shack. I had half my grade 12, grade 6. I was told when I was 18, Boston Bruins had signed me. They wrote in the contract that they'd send me to any university if I didn't make it to the NHL. And my principal at school said, "Go play hockey, don't stay in school." So, yeah, and she's a wonderful music teacher. I'm not. So, no, I don't know music ability. Education-wise, I read like crazy. And so I learn from life, and I learn from people.
Chris, someone says your dad is the baby-faced assassin. How cool is that?
It's a great name, but it's a strange name when you first hear it, because it's the tale of two cities, right? Like an assassin, that's cool, but a baby face, like what exactly is that? But I just think the fact that he actually had that nickname. I remember reading that in the back of a hockey card, probably in 1976 or 77. You know what I mean? Like, oh, Ted is also known as the baby-faced assassin. So my whole life, that's kind of been his nickname. So it's cool. And it's funny to me because I used to read the back of my dad's hockey card, and then my kids used to look at their dad's hockey cards. So now all of them have to have hockey cards, or sorry, a wrestling card, some kind of
Sure.
card to continue the tradition.
Ted, give me a scouting report on Chris as a young hockey player in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada.
Terrible.
Well, it was at that time St. Louis. That's where he started his hockey a little bit, and came back to Winnipeg. Loved the game. Just wasn't his love though. Chris had other things in his love, so he worked, very, very hard. So when he got to high school, when hockey started to come out of him as a demeanor, he started getting meaner on the ice for some reason. He started again finding your role. But I wrote down, I've never said this to Chris, and I always forget to say it because he's very important to me. But he used to play in that Christopher Reeve's Superman game in Madison Square Garden. And he used to have the talent, the fastest skater with all the celebrities. And Chris won that one year, and he smoked everybody. I remember the Rangers saying, "Who the hell's that?" I said, I don't know where he found that speed. He had the speed. He loves the game. He loves hockey. He's a student of the game. He's got so many guys he idolizes. He was great in Madison Square Garden. Got, raised a lot of money. So as an athlete, baseball, it wasn't there. His love was music. It was reading. And all of a sudden, at 15 or 16, you could see, I want to try something. And it happened to be wrestling.
Well, the thing is too, though. The thing is too, when you grow up in Winnipeg, and even though I wasn't a great player, you still know the foundations of it, And I remember the first time I went skating on the ice, I was crying because I didn't like it. I wanted to come off the ice, and my dad wouldn't let me. He said, "Stay on the ice." He wouldn't open the bench. So I said, "No." And then I scored my first goal, and they gave me the puck, and I threw it back on the ice. I said, "We got enough pucks at home." But I was like, "No, you got to get that and make a little trophy of it." But by having these foundations, I don't know what I was going to say. So when I did the skating, the speed drill, the speed contest, it was with other celebrities. And because I'd been skating my whole life, not that there wasn't some other good ones, but I was just faster than them that day. And when I played a couple beer league games down here at Dave Bowden's son's place, I couldn't believe how great I was compared to all the guys from the States. It's like, they didn't know anything. Don't pass it in front of your net. Who doesn't know that? And then, and then some, they get whacked from behind by some fat mailman. And I'm like, am I really going to start fighting in beer league hockey? And I remember the final game was like the end of Slapshot, where some guy got pissed off and there was a penalty shot. He slap shotted it at the goalie's head. And then there was a big bench clearing ball. And I was just sitting there with Greg Bowden. We're just sitting there watching these idiots fight. I'm like, I'm not playing hockey anymore. He goes, I'm not either. So that was it.
Chris, we asked Ted earlier about his music career. How would he handle himself in the ring? Let's go back to Ted's prime. He's got a match. How would he fare in your line of work there?
Well, he's done great already. He's made 2 appearances in the ring as cutting promos, as we say, doing interviews. And the first time in Buffalo, he was a big baby face. And the last time in Chicago, he was the big heel. So he would have done great in wrestling. Definitely was tough enough for it, but he had the personality for it too. He could have been a modern day Bobby the Brain Heenan if you would have chosen differently.
Ted, looking at that from your vantage point, you've always been a team player. Chris is more he's part of a group, but it's individual. Would you have meshed well in an individual type sport?
I think I would. I've never put in that situation. I play a lot of baseball, a lot of football, stuff like that. But even with Chris, with wrestling, it's about everybody. It's more so than people know. And that's what I love about the guys. They're all working their buns off. They all want to get somewhere, and they all need support. So maybe some of them hang, but a lot of them still need a lot of support and stuff like that. So as an individual, would I work okay? No, I wouldn't be any good in the ring. I was in Chicago. I couldn't even get through the ropes. Those ropes are so damn tight. Then Chris says, well, you got to get out of the ring, roll out. You ever tried to roll out of a ring? People were laughing at me. And I was killing myself laughing after. Then I got caught up in the match and I got hit with a trombone. I said, I'm getting out of here. This ain't my league. Now, if I had a hockey stick, I might have been a lot better. But it was, and that was funny because the adrenaline just started flowing. Come on, you guys. Then you see how good a shape you're in. You say, maybe not.
And how do you fare, Ted, during those 2-3 hour rock shows that I'm sure you attend on a regular basis? Do you prefer the wrestling or do you prefer the rock?
I prefer the wrestling, but where I love the rock is Chris has a cruise. The last couple of years I've gone on it. The family atmosphere and the fun that people have. I just walk around and watch how they draw, how the band Fozzy draws so much fun for people and get them rocking. And you can talk to those people and they're on a high, all walks of life. That's something I didn't realize about the music. I love music. I'm a big music guy. But to be in that crowd, and there's your boy up there. I cried the first trip. It was a special event. But then to meet people after, wheelchairs and blind people that come to support and to be part of that family. I'm so proud of all the guys and that, not only in the wrestling, but the music, how they made people feel so darn good. I've not experienced that in the music world. Well, it was special fun for me.
Very cool. And Chris, last question for you. Ted performed in LA for 3 years. Talk a little as a performer yourself. What kind of sets you Los Angeles apart, whether it's on the stage at a concert or in the ring at Staples Center? Is it a different sort of vibe performing in Los Angeles, Southern California, than it is elsewhere?
There really is, and I think it's pretty cool that Ted played in New York and LA, because those are your two meccas, media centers, but completely different cities to this day. I mean, the best thing that ever happened to LA was the invention of Uber, because if you walk on the street in Sunset and try and catch a taxi to get somewhere else, you'll never find one. Whereas in New York, you walk out the street, you take a taxi. As far as getting around, it's so much different. Completely different vibes between the New York hustle and bustle. Southern California is all laid back. Hey, man, it's all good. And from an entertainment standpoint, LA fans are always a little bit tougher, because I think, not jaded is not the word, but they see everything. And not that you don't in New York City, but there's a different passion there. If you go to Madison Square Garden, or even now the Barclays Center or the Prudential Center, there's always such a ferociousness that comes through because of the people that are there. Whereas in Southern California, you're talking about the Forum, Staples Center, the arena in Ontario, the Anaheim Arrowhead Pond. It's just a little bit more laid back, because that's the California attitude. So there is a real difference between the two. They're both great. They're both exciting. They're both a lot of fun. But there's a little bit of a difference in the, I guess you'd say, in the aggressiveness of the crowds, just because of the overall attitude of the people that fill those arenas.
Fair enough. Ted, we'll kind of turn it over to you here to last words. First and foremost, I assume you want to thank your son for surprising you here on this Zoom.
I'll tell you over there, he surprised me a lot. And I'm sitting there going, what is this all about? He's a good son, and he showed up. My birthday's up here when I don't expect him. And he's lived his dream, and very good to people. So, yeah, always special to see, because I know he's busy, but he's got such an in-depth about things, sports, music, life, very intelligent young man. He's living his dream, and he's giving back to society. That's what makes me so proud. He's giving it back, unbeknownst, sometimes known. I like how he lives his life. He's got a great family. They're all fun kids. But the biggest thing is to live your dream in this day and age and live it in two different genres, like, the wrestling and the music, unheard of. But what Chris does, he said, that's what's next. And I love that about him. So
I told Jeff wanted me to come in halfway through. I said, no, put me on the beginning and see how long it takes him to realize that I'm here.
And Ted will give you the final word on hockey, on the hockey community. I know it's been your life. You love it. You're in Canada. You're from Canada, etc. Just maybe some final words on what the game's meant to you and what it's provided you, so to speak.
Well, what it means to me is how lucky I was to play in the National Hockey League. It's like, what's the stats? Chris probably knows them better. There's about 7,000 guys over 100 years, or only 3,500 have played more than 100 games. And for me to play 800, or to me that lived that dream, because to go to Boston when I was 17 years old, 18 years old, that was unheard of at that time. As you get older, all of a sudden now I'm appreciating more and more the people that got me there, the people that helped me, drove me to practice, coached me, and everything else. So the game to me is, now as I'm getting older, man, have I been blessed. I didn't realize at the time I was chosen at that time, but I'm in touch with a lot of the former guys, and it's a special, special bond. Not a lot of people get to live that way. And so I'm very lucky to live that way and talk to old friends and live that life. I can watch the game now and I can say to all the guys, it's going to end for you someday. Love it now. Don't forget where you came from, but really appreciate what's gone on. Got to remember, I'm old 16. Some of those guys' NHL's pensions were $10,000. They made $5,000. They came back and worked in the liquor stores in Winnipeg. I remember them. I thank them every day when I do see them. What a great privilege. And I'm just lucky. LA, New York, good people. You're not forgotten. What a way to live. Last night I sat on my deck out here and I just said, am I lucky or what? I appreciate it now more so than ever in my life. To be able to play a game of hockey, come out of Winnipeg, to get paid for something you love, and people still remember. Not a bad way to live.
Let me ask you one quick question too. I mean, obviously, and you too, Jeff. I mean, what a strange year 2020's been for all of us. I'm wrestling in front of 50 people or 60 people or 100 people. Haven't done that since, 1991. And here we are finally getting back to playing, the final season, the final few weeks of the season with no people and all this sort of stuff. Are you happy with how the NHL has handled this, Dad? Do you think that they're doing the right thing in coming back? Do you think they're doing it the right way in coming back? Because to me, like I said, we never stopped working. So I think the more pluses and positives and diversions there are for people, the better it is. But it's not easy to do, especially for such a huge league like the NHL.
Well, I think there's a lot of financial decisions going on right now.
Sure.
But I can assure you, every one of those guys wants to get out there.
Yeah.
Every one of those guys wants to play a game. And it's going to be tough on them. But I also know there's a lot of fans, too, that want to see something.
Right.
And those players are going to give you your dollar's worth. Is it going to be different? Are they going to get sick possibly? I know the players want to play. They're going to perform. The competitiveness is going to come out, and people want to be part of that, I believe. Am I afraid for what's hockey? I think is doing not bad. Only 2 cities. The other cities, I'm scared. But to me, if you ask me, I'd go out and play. Talk to your families. Is it going to last? We don't know. Is it new? Yes. I believe the players want to play. The fans are going to be entertained. There's always going to be critics, but let them give it a try.
Well, we're looking forward to that, and we were looking forward to this conversation, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Ted, you're the star as usual. Chris, we made Chris take a back seat on this one.
Not for long.
My pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you, gentlemen, and stay safe. That wraps it up for this. That wraps it up for this LA Kings Legend Series. Next time, we will be back with 3 former Kings goaltenders talking about the position in net. Thanks to Ted, thanks to Chris, and thanks to you for watching.
Bring Rogie Vachon.
Rogie's only a phone call away.
Thanks, guys.